Caffeine can help us get through the day, but it can also be the reason we struggle to get through the day in the first place if it messes with our sleep. So, other than trying to pry this sweet caffeinated nectar from our cold dead hands, how far into the day can we consume caffeine without running into sleep issues? Well, let's find out. Caffeine is the most widely used stimulant in the world, and it's not even close. Thing is, nothing gives us a solid boost of energy quite like a nice cup of caffeinated processed sugar. What's interesting though is that biochemically, caffeine is more of an inhibitory substance, namely an adenosine receptor inhibitor. This means that caffeine doesn't necessarily give us energy, instead it prevents our brains from signaling pathways that make us feel tired. Of course, we don't want to inhibit the brain when we actually benefit from feeling tired, aka when we go to sleep. So let's get straight to answering the one important question. When is the absolute latest in the day we can consume caffeine without impacting our sleep? Well, in terms of the scientific data, I have some good news and bad news. The good news is that the science universally agrees that there is a dose and time-dependent effect, where the later and the more you consume caffeine, the more crappy your sleep will be. The bad news, though, is that the science doesn't fully agree on the specifics of these times and dosages. Fortunately, we can still glean some insights from all the data and give not ironclad instructions, but at least general recommendations and ranges to help us make better decisions. Before we do that, we have to of course keep in mind that, like virtually everything, everyone's experiences with caffeine will vary and can be influenced by other factors. Factors like your age, where the older you are, the more susceptible you'll be to caffeine's sleep-disrupting effects, and also your genetics, where certain gene variations can impact caffeine sensitivity. That said, let's get right to it. In the science, studies typically use around 100 milligrams of caffeine, or about 1 cup of espresso, as their smallest measured dose. It seems that you can avoid sleep issues if this amount is consumed no later than 4 to 8 hours before bedtime. Now sure, this is quite a large time range, which again highlights the varying individual effects of caffeine. But if we're strictly looking at which time frame has the most consistent scientific support, I think it's best to lean more towards the 8-hour time frame to be on the safe side. So for example, for myself, I probably want to avoid consuming any caffeine past 3 p.m. since I go to bed around 11 p.m. Now where things get a bit more surprising is if we want to consume more than 100 milligrams. At 200 milligrams, some research showed that your sleep can be disrupted if consumed later than 16 hours before bedtime. That's right, that essentially means that the very standard practice of consuming 2 to 3 cups of coffee or espresso in the morning may very well be your daily limit. Now, don't freak out just yet. First, remember that the science varies on this and more conservative figures exist. And second, this data is within the context of avoiding any sleep issues with caffeine. In fact, these disruptions measured in the research can realistically only be detected by sleep monitoring devices that show subtle reductions to sleep factors like sleep onset time, total sleep time, and sleep efficiency. Subjectively, we probably won't notice much of a difference at all. And if you're okay with losing a few minutes of sleep or taking a bit longer to fall asleep, then you might get away with consuming caffeine at later times. That said, looking at the science as a whole, it might be best to consume 200 milligrams of caffeine no later than 8 hours before bed and 400 milligrams no later than 12 hours. Of course, to be extra safe, you might want to keep your caffeine consumption to just the mornings, or honestly, you might want to avoid caffeine completely. But that's for you to decide. And there you have it. If you are a regular caffeine connoisseur, these are the times that you might want to finish your last cup of joe in order to protect your sleep, at least according to the latest science. Of course, the very best practice is to improve your overall sleep hygiene, but that's a discussion for another video. Other than that, if you enjoyed this video, then please give it a caffeinated thumbs up and share it with your espresso-loving friends. Subscribe for more and let me know what you think in the comments. As always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to get your protein.